Hello, namaskar, and welcome to episode number 25 of Understanding Consciousness podcast. Today, let's focus on the Carl Friston's free energy principle paper that he has written, and I have it open in front of me. And trying to understand it, trying to make sense of it, and I have just realized from this paper. This paper is actually very interesting paper. It's um, it's a paper on the it's like a review paper. It's called the free energy principle, a unified brain theory question mark. It's by Carl Friston, just one author, and the abstract is this: a free energy principle has been proposed recently that accounts for action, perception, and learning. Before I finish the abstract, for the new listeners who have just started listening to this podcast, we have now put this podcast on anchor.fm, and it's available all on all platforms, not just on YouTube. And I'll try to focus more on the audio content rather than trying to be a visual, trying to use YouTube. Let's just try to make it a more audio based podcast so that people can listen while they're doing other things. And for those who have just started listening to it on the one of these platforms, this podcast is an attempt from me, Ratandeep Singh, an attempt to try to understand what's going on in the field of consciousness research, because that research is it's it's at a really exciting stage because of many reasons. First of all, the first reason is that consciousness research was frowned upon for a long time in psychology, science fields. And if you said you were trying to understand consciousness, you weren't taken seriously for a long time. But that has changed. Secondly, psychedelic research has come up, and it's very becoming mainstream now in the last 4 5 years because of some groundbreaking research on PTSD and depression and other things that can be really cured with psychedelics. So this podcast is just a way for a layman like me. I have not been trained in neuroscience. I've not been trained in any science except for computer science, and I'm a programmer. But I have a thirst for knowledge in this field, and this is an attempt to understand it and share with you guys. So, in the last few episodes, the first 25 episodes, we covered a lot of different research papers. I started with the electromagnetic theory of um, consciousness, electromagnetic field theory of consciousness, and then I moved on as I learned, and then I realized that this is the new thing. The free energy principle is the new idea. It's not a new idea. It's quite an old idea, um, spanning 30 40 years ago, from starting from information theory actually. But it has been gaining a lot of traction, and I just want to understand it. And I thought, let's go back to the creator of this, not the creator, but the descriptor of this theory, Carl Friston, who is one of the pioneers in this field, a really well respected guy. And I thought I'll just try to understand something about this. I've been bogged down in by the mathematics of the whole thing, which I am not really comfortable with. But I realize most of this mathematics is symbolic in nature. It's not like you are doing a lot of operations on mathematics. It's much more of a formal representation of the ideas, which I think is possible to understand by me. So let's carry on with the abstract. which is a free energy principle has been proposed recently that accounts for action, perception, and learning. This review looks at some key brain theories in the biological, for example, neural Darwinism, and physical, for example, the information theory and optimal control theory. Sciences from the free energy perspective. Crucially, one key theme runs through each of these theories: optimization. Furthermore, if we look closely at what is optimized, the same quantity keeps emerging, namely value, expected reward, expected utility, or its complement, surprise, prediction error, expected cost. This is the quantity that is optimized under the free energy principle, which suggests that several global brain theories might be unified within a free energy framework. End of abstract. What do we understand from this? There are a lot of theories of the brain, disparate theories. Some are biological and some are physical. Biological means one example is neural Darwinism, which I believe, I'm not sure, it's more about how the the brain kind of I don't know. I should read about neural Darwinism. It sounds very interesting. I believe it's something to do with the way the brain. The Darwinism here, I think, is just this natural selection, culling of unnecessary unnecessary connections and strengthening connections that are used more. Connections, by connections I mean connections between the neurons. That's the neural part, the neural Darwinism, I believe. So I'm not sure, I'm not going to check now. And physical theories, the information theory and optimal control theory. And this is what is really fascinating about this field. Information theory, entropy. I made a few videos on both of these. My first video ever I made on science. Actually, the first video was on Saturn's rings, but the second video I made, which I'm really proud of even now, is on Maxwell's demon. It's about entropy. It's trying to understand entropy, and you should check it out. I'll put up links there in the podcast description. And information. My third video was on information theory and how information is actually a measure of surprise. All right. It's a measure of surprise. Entropy is the name given to this surprise. But entropy can have multiple meanings. One is just the thermodynamical entropy, which is actually I think the origin of the phrase entropy, and this is the same entropy that is in the second law of thermodynamics, that entropy of the whole universe is always increasing. But then there is the information theory entropy, the information entropy, which is also kind of related to the thermodynamic entropy. And this is this relation between thermodynamic entropy and the information theory entropy is explored in this Maxwell's demon video. The reason Maxwell's demon looks like a paradox is something to do with information about the particles in the box. I'm not gonna go through with that. Should go check the video. It's not about this. This podcast is not about this. I'm gonna keep it a little short. It's already 9.5 minutes long. So the next steps are this paper. This paper is, I think, what will teach me exactly what this whole idea is about. I've already discussed it in many older podcast episodes, and it feels like I'm rehashing everything instead of trying to go deep into it. But I swear this is the last one. This is the last one of such kind. And next podcast episode is going to be a deeper look into this paper. This paper, which talks about a whole branch. It talks about a principle. It's a principle, which means it's a law on the laws. It's a law about laws, and the thing that it states is all these theories, the information theory and the neural Darwinism, they are all these theories are trying to optimize one thing. First of all, these theories are about one thing, optimization, and they are trying to optimize the same quantity, which keeps emerging in different ways in different theories. And this quantity is either the expected reward or the surprise or prediction error or expected cost. And we have already gone through active inference, which we definitely will review, go through in this paper as well. So if you don't know about all these things, just know this, that the next few episodes are going to be about trying to understand this principle. Why is it called the free energy? We'll try to understand that. It also involves homeostasis, which is where a closed system tries to maintain its internal environment within a set boundary limitations. So, having said that, the the next part is to see that what is the motivation behind it? Why are we doing this? Why am I doing this? How does it relate to consciousness? Well, conscious perceptions and feelings are kind of related to homeostasis, and they are related to this free energy principle. And it's a different way to try to understand conscious perception, which is consciousness has two sides. It doesn't have two parts. It has, I think of it as two sides of the same coin, basically. Not two sides. It's like a shape which also has a color. Right? A ball has a shape, but it also has a color. Doesn't mean you can separate the two. The color cannot live without the shape, and the shape cannot live without the color. Same is the case with consciousness. Consciousness and its contents. Consciousness is made up of its contents, and conscious contents can only be made sense of in the conscious sphere. But you can think of these two in different ways. And to try to understand consciousness, we can try to look at it from that other side, where we're trying to understand the perception and sensations. And the fact that we are biological processes in action is an entry point into that idea, that the very reason we perceive the world and sense the world in the way in which we do has to be about survival, has to be about keeping ourselves alive, has to be about predicting what can happen and trying to correct it so that it should happen according to us. It's a fight against our bodies are constantly fighting against randomness. The randomness, which is an unstoppable force in nature, and ultimately it is going to win over, and we are all going to die, sadly. So kids, if you're listening, don't I mean, sorry to break it to you, but yeah, everyone dies. And randomness ultimately wins, but our bodies try to prolong that inevitability for as long as it wants. So, this is why I am trying to understand the free energy principle, and this is what is a great entry into trying to understand consciousness. And on that note, I'll leave you. Bye bye, and Happy New Year.